The year is 1982, and there's a bit of a kerfuffle going on in the South Atlantic between Argentina and the United Kingdom. A 250-year-long string of events, which can be vastly oversimplified down to a classic case of disputed territory, led to these two nations declaring war over these small Falkland Islands. Well, they never actually declared war, and the whole thing was technically a bit of an unofficial war, but all the same, honours had been tarnished, and so in the troops went. For 10 weeks, the brutal capabilities and ferociousness of modern warfare were demonstrated, resulting in thousands of casualties on both sides. However, just 30 miles away, British and Argentine ships floated lazily within sight of each other, exchanged troops and supplies, and were even in regular peaceful contact. So why did they get on up here, but not down here? Well, it's because this strange area was the Red Cross Box. The box, which was actually a circle just over 20 miles across, had been proposed by the British before they even launched their fleet to act as a neutral zone where hospital ships could be stationed without the fear of attack, which was handy to have given their nearest land base was 4,000 miles away, and the archipelago itself was some 8,000 miles from home. Throughout the short conflict, 2 Argentine Navy and 3 Royal Navy ships, along with 1 British cruise ship, were stationed in the box. And whilst the conflict raged on, these ships worked together, exchanging wounded soldiers for treatment, whilst the smaller vessels acted as ambulances, carrying the wounded over from battlefields, between the main ships, and over to neutral Uruguay, a 4.5-day journey away, to be flown home. Now, you may think it's a little strange that 2 nations would be sending armies of men to kill each other, yet working together to heal the soldiers that were wounded but didn't actually die. And you'd be right, it is strange when you put it like that. But for this odd moment of humanity, we have the Geneva Convention to thank. These articles lay out the laws for war, and the Falklands War was one of the best examples of their adoption in a modern international conflict, owing to both sides following and in places exceeding the rules in order to minimise human suffering. Throughout the conflict, great care was taken to treat both sides as humanely as possible. I mean, given the circumstances. In fact, the Falklands War is full of these rare examples of kindness, from prisoners of war being regularly released before the conflict even came to an end, to search and rescue operations being aided on both sides by combat helicopters, even though they totally didn't have to and risked being shot down as easy targets in doing so. On top of this, we have the neutral zone, where no troops could enter to protect the citizens, the regular communications between both sides on who they had captured so their families could know they were safe, and, of course, the Red Cross Box, which enabled thousands of wounded soldiers to be safely and quickly treated. There were, of course, issues with the box. The Geneva Convention, for example, states that hospital ships may not possess or use a secret code for their wireless or other means of communication, as this can be seen as hostile, but this did make the logistics of knowing when casualties were going to arrive difficult. This was because the hospitals couldn't really communicate with any of the combatants, as to do so on an unencrypted line would have exposed their location, which isn't a smart thing to do in a war zone where long-range weapons exist. However, the hospital crews managed to make do, and the regular Red Cross inspections found the ships to be safe and humane environments to be treated in. By the end of the conflict, just over 900 people had died, and although this may seem like a lot, especially by modern standards, and whilst it is still definitely a tragic loss of life, it's also easy to see how this number could have been far higher without the strange cooperation of these 2 opposing forces. Now, the picture painted in this video is a very lovely one of 2 nations coming together to help their fellow man in a time of need. But it's important to remember that this was not strictly the case. Following these rules was required by international law, and exceeding them almost certainly came with strategic advantages for both sides. And it's worth remembering that acts of generosity in one arena do not excuse brutality in another. This was, after all, an armed conflict. So these actions are less a testament to the kindness of the nations involved, but instead more a sign of the humanity of those fighting, and a shining example of how organisations, such as the Red Cross, can try to protect people in times of crisis.